land on which our homes and our church were built was not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse and the Chichumits, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you are joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or who moved through the place where you now live in the times before colonization and genocide and where they are now. We pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. We also pause for just a moment to light a candle and pray for peace. We hold in our hearts all those currently threatened by greed and imperialism, from the people in Ukraine to those in Somalia, and we recommit ourselves to nurturing peace, peace in the world and peace within. And this is Mary Jo Hamilton. Let's breathe together for just a moment, breathing in peace, breathing out love, and recommit ourselves to the work of building a world where every child grows up safe and loved. Amen and blessed be. And now I invite you to join me in speaking aloud our words of welcome. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Body, mind, heart, and spirit, just as you are welcomed here. Okay. And then a little out of order here, but this is the child's lighting and song of affirmation. We are hoping that everyone has had a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's light our chalices together. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
Join us in singing. We stand in by your spirit. Join us in singing.
Oh, here's sung. Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry. Wasn't
That's all right.
Sorry.
All right.
We'll hear this.
Song affirmation.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
I wanted to just go off script for a second and say something about joys and concerns and where they are living in our summer services. We wanted to continue the Zoom tradition of having folks let us know in advance about joys and concerns and celebratory things, and we will make slides. And we will have someone in the sanctuary light candles as we share joys and concerns. But I wanted to remind you that to let you know that you want to be letting Ryan know in advance if you have something that you would like to share. I think people have gotten out of practice, so we don't have any joys and concerns shared that way. But I did want to lift up Fran Rodriguez, who had a real bad break to her wrist this week. So let us keep her in mind. And Michael, you want to light a quick candle for Fran? And if she's watching, Fran, we're thinking about you. Thank you. The 70s was a liminal decade, lodged awkwardly between the dawning of the age of Aquarius and Ronald Reagan's Morning in America. And unlike the 50s and some iconic moments in the 60s, it wasn't so much of a shared experience as a mosaic of different perspectives. We'll offer you some different themes of the 70s to consider today. Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach was published. I see people going, oh yeah, I remember that. Was published in 1970. It follows the life of a seagull and his attempt to learn more about life through both exploration and experimentation. Bach initially conceived of the story as a series of short stories he published in Flying magazine, enjoying limited success. After compiling the stories into a multi-part book, Bach's work skyrocketed in sales. My parents and all my friends' parents had it too. In Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the reader is introduced to the idea of having purpose in one's life and the practicality of pursuing one's dreams. This quote captures that. How much more is there now to living? Instead of our drab slogging forth and back to the fishing boats, there's reason to life. We can lift ourselves out of ignorance. We can find ourselves as creatures of excellence and intelligence and skill. We can be free. We can learn to fly. Come, let us worship together. Please join us, rise in body and spirit as you are able, and join us for the opening hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth, which is number 21 in the gray hymnal.
Now let's take a moment to engage in the practice of generosity together. For those of you able to make a financial contribution, the logistics are on your screen. We'd invite you to either copy down the information you need or simply go to the website to make a donation. The website address is in the chat if you're on Zoom. Those of you who are newer or visiting from another part of the country may not be aware that we typically give away all of the cash from our Sunday offering to local charities whose missions align with our values, a program called the Month of Sundays. This month, the recipient is Weekend Food for Kids, a program started by UUCP and St. Mark's to provide extra food to families that take advantage of the summer lunch program. The bag of food they receive each Friday gets them through the weekend. If you are donating online, you can choose Month of Sundays from the top-down menu. If you are mailing or dropping off a check, simply indicate in the memo line whether it is intended for the Month of Sundays or our general fund. So in the spirit of love and for the continuing work of this church, we will now take some time to practice generosity together. Today with a poem by Wendell Berry, followed by music by John Denver, an icon of the 70s. The 70s saw the first Earth Day celebration, and there was a growing awareness and appreciation of the environment and nature. The poem and song are really both meditative, so please get comfortable and put your feet on the ground, relax your arms at your side, close your eyes, and relax. The Peace of the Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake up in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. for our 1970s slideshow. So we're going to start out with Nancy Nelson. So she says, I grew up in Wilbur, Washington, which is 68 miles west of Spokane on Highway 2. It's a very small town, and despite having moved there at age 5, I always felt like a newcomer and somewhat out of place. I was a serious kid, always reading, carrying a pocket dictionary, and doing other strange things. Leaving town for the University of Idaho in 1980 was a relief. This first black and white picture is from 1971 when I was age 9. It's one of the first pictures taken with my new camera, and I was proud of having organized all the neighborhood kids for making the biggest sand pile ever. I'm on the far left. The next slide is a photo of me with the bike from 1974, and I'm 12. I earned $200 babysitting and spent it on a new Schwinn Breeze. Freedom on wheels. I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? This next slide is a picture of me with the Girl Scout uniform. I am 14 at the Spokane airport on my way to Mexico City with the Girl Scouts. Yeah. Okay. Now we come to Peggy Jenkins, and she grew up in Hawaii on Oahu, and she went to Kalaheo High School. Is that right? And this one, it's a family picture taken in 1962. She's the baby. So the next two slides are from her sophomore year of high school in 1977, and they're from the yearbook. She says, in this one with the guitar, I'm singing at a school assembly. Moonshadow, I think. And the next slide is also from the yearbook. Next, we have Mark Willis, and he says, for me, the 70s cover my earliest memories in all my elementary school years. We moved from the foothills of the Himalayas to a Seventh-day Adventist college in central India, where my parents taught. This first photo is of my younger sister and me in my dad's office, which was sectioned off from my bedroom. More on the barbed wire windows later. I wasn't really all that aware of issues in the wider world, but enjoyed trying to listen along as Dad fine-tuned the shortwave radio to pick up the BBC World News broadcast from Ceylon. My first awareness of politics in America came with the election of Jimmy Carter. The parents of my American friends seemed very worried about what this new Baptist president would do. The SDA Church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, was my world for the whole decade, but my parents were interested in and taught us all about the religions we are exposed to in India. This next photo has my two sisters and me directly in front of my dad's parents and aunts and uncles. We were disconnected from all our relatives in Australia, except via weekly letters from my grandparents. Phone calls were exceedingly rare. We would see the grandparents and cousins every 3 years on furloughs. I finished off the 70s in Michigan, arriving the same month Elvis died. I was confused by all the hubbub, which was just the start of my realization that I was in for some cultural adjustments. I believe the term third culture kid came later. And this next photo here is in front of the regrettable wood paneling, and it would have been taken that same year in 1978, early into this adaptation. Around the time a psychology graduate student interested in how missionary kids adapt when they return home became concerned after interviewing me. Remember those barred wires? Okay, bar windows. Apparently, my drawing of our home with bars on the windows and with trees depicted as brown trunks with flat-based greenery instead of round green balls had deeper, potentially dark meaning. Mom explained that this was the norm for houses not only on our campus, but all around Pune, and that goats loved to trim all the greenery from the trees that they could reach. So it made sense, right? Now we come to Charla Willis, and in this first slide, she's she came from the Neal family. She's the baby. She writes, compared to many people's, I forgot to say Mark is here today, yeah, and so is Charla, and Peggy, of course, and Nancy is not here today. So compared to many people's experiences, I had a very stable and family-based experience. I remember being very concerned about Watergate. How could my president have done anything wrong? We moved to Alberta, Canada in 1977, and that was a big step in opening my mind to the wider world. A lot of fun, eh? Looking back, I see that landlines without answering machines made a lot of difference in day-to-day arrangements and emergencies. Also, no TV remotes meant a lot of more up and downing and changing channels, turning the volume up and down and racing to turn off the TV, run upstairs and jump into bed when my parents were arriving back from prayer meeting. A few of us did that, I think. I remember my teenage sister making herself bell-bottom jeans by sewing in big calico gussets. Psychedelic for me referred to notebook covers, swimsuits, and stickers with crazy colored patterns. Smiley faces were big. This next slide is from first grade in Scottsdale, Arizona. And her final slide is her big trip to Hawaii with her grandma and grandpa. It was her first plane trip. So next we come to a sister pair. We had a sister pair last week if you were here or tuned into Zoom. And this sister pair happens to be me and my sister, Nancy Lucas Metzler. We both actually attend church, but she Zooms in from Evergreen, Colorado. We were part of the trend of having large families after the war, except we weren't Catholic. We were actually Unitarians. I am the baby and Nancy is second from the right. The next slide is again from 1958. I was 2, Nancy was 8. Being in the Seattle area, we grew up with rain and learned to go out and play no matter what the weather. No umbrellas. We just dressed for it, but our heads were covered tightly with hoods. This next picture, I think many of us have such a picture, right? And those little booths. We've seen these fashionable glasses before in a previous slideshow last week. Contacts were not yet a thing back then. This next picture has to do with fashion. In junior high and high schools, the girls at that time took home ec and the boys took shop, although that was starting to change. One of my friends actually took shop. This pantsuit was a product of my home ec class. I think it was in 9th grade that this is really a big deal. And this is a change in what happened with girls and women. In 9th grade, girls were finally allowed to wear pants to school, but they had to be really nice, yeah? No jeans, so something like this, right? By the time I was a senior, we were allowed to wear jeans. It loosened up pretty quickly.